Hi, how you doing? Well, despite all the challenges that we had earlier in the season, the July heat came along, and that heat, along with the long days that we have in July, that really kick-started the garden. And so here we are into the first week of August now, and the garden is looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. So I thought we'd go over it. I'll talk about the vegetables that I have here. There's tomatoes and onions, brassica crops, beans, strawberries, and the squashes and the melons. We'll just take a look at all of them a little close up and see how everything is doing. My name is Sharon, and I garden on a large yard in a small town in east central Saskatchewan, Zone 3. Welcome to my Sask Garden. So the July heat is done. And along with that July heat came the turning off of the rain tap. We got no rain in July, or if we did, it was like minuscule amounts that didn't really help very much. So the challenge now is definitely watering. Even though it is getting, just a little bit later in the season now, it is still really important to keep up with the watering. In a few of the beds, I do have drip watering set up, so it's really just a matter of attaching a hose. Each bed is individual. I can't water all of the beds at the same time. And I wouldn't want to, because some of them get watered for longer than others. The strawberries, for example, they're mulched and they only get 45 minutes of watering, whereas the tomatoes get an hour and a half because they have such deep roots. And I'm just going to show you what I've rigged up to water the squashes and the melons as well. So let's take a closer look. I'm going to try and hide from the wind. For the most part it's not too bad, but some areas are pretty windy in here. Anyways, I'm going to start here on the bean trellis. That worked out really good. I'm very happy with this. And as you can see, the beans are really producing, they're flowering pretty flowers as well. The flowers are purple. And producing a lot of beans. I've only picked a couple of times so far. I was just waiting for them to get a little bit bigger. And I think today, actually, I could go through and do quite a big picking, because it does look like there's quite a few more that are ready. Now, some of the ones that I picked the other day, I measured because I couldn't believe the size of them. These are purple peacock pole beans, and although the pod is purple now, when you cook them, they turn green, and they're good. They're a good bean. When I picked them the other day, I measured a couple of them. These, I think, would probably be about a 6-inch pod, but the ones that I picked the other day were 9 inches. They were from down on the bottom. They may have been a little bit overgrown, because in a couple of them I did find the beginnings of a seed, and so I think it's best to pick them, before any seed at all begins to develop inside. That's when you get the most tender bean. Anyway, I'm really happy with this trellis. It is not bothered by the wind as I thought it might be, or the vegetables growing up it. I thought they might be bothered by the wind. They're not. So this is a cattle panel trellis. We were able to buy the cattle panels here at our local co-op. They run somewhere around $65, $70, I think they were. And then you have to buy T-posts as well. We went a little bit overboard with the T-posts here in the vegetable garden with, I think these are 8-footers. We've since put up 2 more. And I think we got the smaller light-duty T-posts for those, and those I think are 6-footers. And they are better, or not better, but they are enough. This was, like I say, just a little bit overboard, but nothing is taking away these trellises, that's for sure. I think a tornado could come through and the trellises will still be in place. I don't know about the vegetables, but the trellises certainly will be. Anyways, we have 2, and we'll go to the next one right away. The next one has delicata squash growing up it. So I won't grow the beans here next year because I like to crop rotate, and they will get moved over to the next trellis, and squash will grow on these beds, I think, next year instead. It's funny to already be planning for next year, but I do tend to do that. I think it's beneficial to see how things are doing in areas that you plant them, and how you have things combined and what the problems might be, and take note of that. And, try and adjust it next year. Always just little tweaks to help next year be just a little bit better. And then, next thing you know, you've got some things hopefully perfected, or as much as you can have them perfected, despite the weather or whatever challenge might come along. And the only challenge I've had with the beans, I'm going to say, has been watering. This side is set up for drip watering to water the onions, and it does get the beans, but perhaps not as much. I don't water the onion, that frequently. The beans could use water, especially when they're fruiting. The beans could use water a little more often. I should have banked up the soil to create a kind of a moat to hold water, to give those beans a deep soaking on either side. So I'm going to remember that for next year and do that. When I'm planting the bean seeds, I will create just bank up the soil and create that kind of a moat area to be able to hold the water, so that it gives those bean roots a really good soaking. And next we have the delicata squash. I have them growing on both sides of the trellis here. And I've been helping them just to keep them a little bit closer to the trellis instead of coming out and vining out this way. I've just been using these clips. These are some sort of laundry clips, I think, clothespins that you can buy at Dollarama, and they work really, really well. I have these other small ones as well, but actually I prefer these because this really has a nice large space in there, so that you can just kind of secure it a little bit, and it doesn't, jam it or squish the vine at all. It just holds it there until the vine can attach itself onto the trellis. I don't have any trouble with this, actually, aside from having to just keep them a little bit closer. I just have to watch for the odd errant vine that wants to come out and grow somewhere else. And so as long as it's got a little bit of length to it, they're easily bendable, or you could just curve them and move them to go in the other direction. And so these delicata, they have started forming fruit. I'll just turn the camera around and show you closer. In total, I have 4 plants. I have 2 on either side. And so the fruit has started forming. I think that it's going to have to grow as long as it can out here. I've been trying to figure out a way that I can actually perhaps protect this if need be. We're going to have to see as the time comes. But I think a fair amount of fruit is starting to form. And they're a winter squash, so they will need to mature and harden. Although I had one early one, very early, that was mature. It had the stripes on it, had the coloring and everything. So I picked it and took it into the house. And it is really hard now. It won't, my thumbnail won't go through the skin. And that is a way that you can test to make sure that winter squash is fully cured and mature, is that you can't pierce that outer skin with your fingernail. And I can't do that with the one I picked. I bet you it was a month ago already. I was surprised to have one, that was so mature already. It surprised me. Anyways, so far I'm happy with this. They are growing as I had imagined they would. Perhaps I thought they would be a little bit higher up, but overall I think they're doing just fine. And so while we're here, we'll just take a look at the butternuts now. There's one of the beds of butternuts. There's 2 beds like this. Each of them have 3 hills. And they have started to set fruit, and so I'll just turn the camera around and give you a look. And there's some of the fruit that has set. And that, I think, is going to be about the biggest that I have so far. Is that size. Now, of course, they will still grow. And here is what I've done for watering. I've taken jugs, in this case milk jugs, and here they're painted black because I had the idea that I would try and use them as passive heat for the greenhouse, but I don't know how many you'd need for them to make a difference. It didn't really make any difference in my greenhouse. So anyways, so I took these jugs and I just cut out the top just to make it a little bit easier to fill with water. There is a very small hole just on the side closest to the root. And I fill up the jugs every other day with water, and it slowly drips in. So I have a kind of a drip watering system, but I can use warm water or rainwater. I mean, right now I have no rainwater, but we do fill up the barrels and allow that water to warm. I have one of those jugs on each of the hills, and I also have some jugs on the melons to water them this way as well. And so far that's working. I haven't found that they are needing water. That's 4 liters of water for each root zone every other day. While I'm over here, I'll talk about the Rowena strawberries. They just continue to impress me. I'm really happy that I started them from seed. These are, I started them from seed in January and planted them out fairly early into the garden. It would have been sometime mid-May, I think. And I mulched probably early July. I mulched. And that's just it's actually not a very thick layer of flax straw. And my hope is that they will just continue to produce. I mean, they have really started to push the blossoms and the fruit just lately. Today is watering day. When I'm done this video, the drip watering will get set up, and then we'll go through all the beds. And these strawberries are set up on drip water. It's this kind of brown tubing right here that has emitters, pressure compensating emitters every 6 inches, and there's one line for each row of strawberries. So I have 3 rows of strawberries basically. And of course that can be amended as needed if we needed to add 2 more rows, say for, to accommodate runners. They haven't put out any runners this year yet. I don't know if they will. Maybe that'll happen in the second year. Growing strawberries successfully, growing strawberries from seed, is kind of new for me. Here's the tomato bed. I have 9 plants growing in here, a number of different varieties, and they're all producing well. They're all beginning to ripen. I have harvested a few, enough for fresh eating, not enough for like salsa or something like that, which actually is my hope, that I get a good yield so that I can make a few jars of salsa. Not a lot. But, I'm happy with all of the varieties. I'm not disappointed in anything this year. Let's put it that way. It's now time, for me, this is what I generally do, around the beginning of August. About a week ago or so, I went in and I thinned out a lot of the downward facing non-producing stems. That's usually how I thin my tomatoes. I don't cut off the suckers. I let the suckers produce fruit. But about this time of year, I do start cutting off the tops, because the fruit that is going to form now probably will not have enough time. Certainly not on the big tomatoes. Maybe on the small tomatoes, they would still have enough time before the low light levels and before frost hits or before it starts getting cold. They just don't have the time to continue to bulk up and become a big tomato. So about this time of year I do cut off the tops, just to concentrate the energy of the plant to producing the fruit that is already on the plants. So in the last video I went over all of the different varieties that I have here. I'll just run through them really quick here just to show you again. This one is called Plum Regal, a plum tomato. I have 2 plants of this. I think they're actually producing nicer this year than last year. This one is a Parks Whopper. I do like this tomato. It's nice. Always consistent size fruit, about that size, nothing too massive. This one is Juliet. I've picked quite a few off this one already, a grape type of tomato. I just really love this tomato. It's good for fresh eating. It's good for roasting. You can also make sauce with it. It's, like I said, it's just a really good tomato. And this one is Padano. This is seed I brought back from Sicily when I went on a trip there last year. I didn't get a chance to plant this last year, but I am really quite liking this. It was actually the earliest fruit to ripen in the garden. I have had a couple of them already, a good chance to, we have eaten a couple of them already, and they are a very tasty fruit. And this one is beef maestro, a beefsteak type. It's okay. It grows very big tomatoes. It doesn't grow a lot of them, or at least that's been my experience so far. It's also indeterminate and may need a longer season to, put on more tomatoes. This one on the end is another plum regal, and lots of fruit in there. Lots and lots on one plant. I have two of these type of tomato. They're called Fiorentino. I grew them last year, love them. This was also seed that I brought back from Sicily. I thought these were supposed to be determinate, but obviously they are indeterminate because they just keep growing and growing. Here we have an early girl, and it does have quite a bit of early fruit now. I think the carrots have really come along really nicely. This first outer row are sugar snacks, and then there is another row just on the other side, and those are Bolero. The Bolero, I had poor germination, and the sugar snacks it's my first year growing them, and just beautiful plants. Really happy with them. And the onion bed, I'm pretty happy with the look of the onions. In the last video, I was concerned about, the fact that it seemed they weren't bulbing enough, but boy, they sure went to town in the last month. And so, nice size onions. I'm pretty happy with that. And these are, on this outer row, these are Kelsey, and they are starting to fall over. And so, when they fall over all by themselves like this, and that neck gets a little soft, that's a sign that your onions are approaching maturity and they can be harvested soon. I have never stepped on my onions or broken the stems. I wait for them to do that naturally. And some varieties do it a little earlier than others. So these are the Kelsey, and only a few of the Kelsey have fallen on their own so far. Overall though, that's probably one of my better crops of onion. The Kelsey certainly did grow big onion. They don't have great storage life, but they have a little bit of storage life, and I will just, as they mature, I will just begin to cure them and hopefully get a little bit of storage life out of them anyway. Back to squash. This is the mashed potato squash bed. Pretty happy with these two. They continue to push a lot of squash. There's 4 on that plant. Oh, there's actually 5 on that plant. A bunch in here as well. But yeah, some nice size mashed potato squash. And some of them are fairly hard already. Again, those are winter squash that I'm hoping for winter storage. And these mashed potato squash don't really vine a lot, or that's what it looks like to me, but they do vine a little. And so I've just been not really staking, but just kind of holding the vine in the beds by using a rebar stake. And same thing here. I just don't want them to come out and kind of stop access to my path, which, was the issue growing squash to begin with. I do want to grow squash, but I want them to be bush type squash. So this one I probably could actually maybe pin it with one of my clothespins there, just to try and keep it closer to the bed instead of coming out this way. And I think same thing, I will probably, start coming in on the squashes and cutting off this very new fruit. I don't know that it would have enough time to develop now. In this bed, I've harvested the garlic. Not quite a week ago, I pulled the garlic. I got about 50 head. They're not the biggest garlic I've ever grown. Some of them are. Some of them are nice. The red Russian variety was the biggest. I have them drying on a cart. The rest of what's growing in here is rutabaga and beets. And some of the rutabaga are a pretty nice size. I think I'm going to start pulling some of them. I thought that perhaps they would be a later crop, but they are, especially the ones on the ends or the ones that have a lot more room to grow. They are, looking pretty good. And for sure the beets can start getting harvested. And here in the center, now that the garlic is gone, I have some starts for collards and broccoli and kale, and I'm going to plant a few of those into the center and see how long I can take that into a fall crop. They're all very tolerant of really cold weather, so just to get something started for maybe October, November harvest is what I'm thinking. But next we'll just go over to the cabbage bed and see how that one's doing. So here's the brassica bed. I have what's turning out to be later cabbage on this side. I didn't think it was going to be that late. The green one with these great big leaves is called Pixie. It is not, don't let the name fool you. There's nothing small about it. It is quite a big cabbage in leaf. The heads are starting to form on those cabbages. Anyways, this is going to be later cabbage. What I thought was, my thought was going to be that this Red Express, which is a beautiful cabbage, I might say, the leaf is just gorgeous. The Red Express I thought would be a later cabbage, and that the Pixie would be an early cabbage. I'd be able to harvest it and then have a lot of room for the Red Express to continue to mature into the fall. But it's really not turning out that way. There's the odd head that I probably could harvest. They will be small heads, but a lot of leaf. I don't know that I'll grow that one again. I'm not that fond of, I'll see how it tastes, of course, but I'm not really fond of it as a small type of cabbage, you know, where you have limited space. I'm not fond of that at all. The other thing growing here is the kaleette, which is a hybrid between kale and Brussels sprouts. It's supposed to grow these little mini kales up the stem. I have been picking off the leaves, which are edible, but they're really tough. I don't really care for them. Now, after they're chopped and frozen and cooked, perhaps in a soup, they might be okay, but they're still quite tough. Even, you know, taking out stripping the leaves off of the midrib, it's still quite a tough plant. I think that it's probably going to be best used as compost, to be honest. And so, you know, I picked off the leaves in the hopes that those little kaleette bunches would start growing up the stem. But I don't really see that happening. This whole kaleette experiment just might be a bit of a bust, to be honest. So I'll just get you in close to the stem there. And what we're looking at here is the biggest plant on the east side. You can see these little baby, where are we? You can see these little babies just wanting to grow. And down here, they have started. So, you know, not every few days, maybe once a week, I pick off about 5 of those leaves. And hopefully that will get them growing. Maybe the plant still has too many leaves. It does continue to push an awful lot of growth. I haven't had any butterflies or flea beetle damage now. Once the canola is starting to die down, then those flea beetles will start making their way back to the garden, I'm sure. Just to show you that leaf of the red cabbage, just look how pretty that is. What a beautiful, it's more silver than anything. Just a beautiful leaf. Big too. And then just beginning to form little heads in there. These are the tiara cabbage, and you can see the slug damage there. So I have harvested a couple of these heads, and I'm going to go through and harvest the rest of them today. I actually just ordered fermentation supplies, and I'm going to try my hand at making a few jars of sauerkraut this year, just right in the jar. And here are what's left of my broccoli plants. I have picked off a few side shoots, but I think that now I'm going to probably pull the plants and get rid of them entirely, because I don't think that they're going to actually produce any more side shoots by the looks of it. So yeah, starting to clean out the garden, and by pulling the broccoli, it's also going to give a little bit more room for those red cabbages to grow. These are my salad bowls. I've shown them in previous videos. Now I don't have any more lettuce in here. The lettuce all got eaten. Anyways, These are the mini-me cucumbers. They are producing like crazy. The vine grew up the tomato trellis. I have a tomato trellis in there. And then it bent over. And it is now almost to the ground. And still producing all the way down. There's lots of cucumbers in here that are ready to be picked. I noticed this yesterday. They're a hybrid, expensive seed, parthenocarpic, which means they don't need bees to pollinate them to make fruit, but they are a really good cucumber, and they max out at about that size. You can let them go a little bit bigger, they just get fatter, and I think they're probably tastiest just about that size. And the other thing about them, maybe it's because they're growing in a container and not touching soil at all anywhere, but they're quite healthy plants. No problem with any kind of fungus issues at all. And these are my long English cucumbers, and you can see these this started up just the other day. These little dead spots in there, and then it expands to this, maybe like a powdery mildew or some sort of fungus, I think, that is going on with this plant. Only this plant, so it may not have the tolerance bred out of it. It is still producing fruit though. Some nice long English cucumbers. It is still blossoming and producing. So I can just pick that off and not be too concerned about it. So that one is the sweeter yet, and this one growing beside it is Summer Dance, which has not produced as much. I'm actually glad that I planted the mini-me, and I may only plant the mini-me next year instead of bothering with these. And I've got the water jugs for drip watering set up for both of these cucumbers as well. I have jugs set up on the melon beds too. So I think the last time I did a video for the melons, they were still quite small, and I was fairly disappointed in their growth, but they really enjoyed the July heat and just exploded in growth and set quite a bit of fruit. These are the honeydew, and so right here in this little area there's 3 or 4 4, I guess, and I think I've seen some small ones through here as well. They do kind of hide until they start taking on a little bit of growth. And that is the Diplomat hybrid of honeydew melon. This is the Sureness watermelon. And there's one nice one and a few small ones as well that have set in here. 2 plants of each, 2 of the honeydew, 2 of the watermelon, and this is the early champ cantaloupe. And again, a few fruit. There's a bundle of 3 going on there, and there are some smaller ones in there too. And that is pretty much what I wanted to happen, was a few fruit of each. I didn't want masses of fruit, of course, again, it's just the 2 of us that are eating it. And I had hoped that I would be able to grow 2 of each in the same bed, and that has worked. So I could continue, if I wanted to, I could continue to do that again in future years now that I know that works. And again, I think it's all about, testing out little theories or little experiments to see what does work, always learning what you can accomplish in the garden, and then, making notes or paying attention to that and tweaking it a bit if you need to, and then having that knowledge going forward that you are able to do this or that, or this doesn't work, maybe that will. Always some sort of a little learning process going on when you're growing vegetables. I finished picking the haskell. I did get a pretty good harvest from them. I have 3 shrubs, and I think I would have gotten about 5 or 6 kilos all combined, which I froze, and mostly I like to eat them with yogurt or in a protein smoothie. That is my favorite way. And I think the last thing out here is the 2 zucchini plants. No, I still forgot Esterina. We'll have to go over and say hello to her. Anyways, these are 2 Gold Rush zucchini plants growing in 5-gallon pails. They've given me a lot of zucchini, and they are still setting a lot of fruit. I do like this variety of zucchini better than any that I've grown in the past. Simply in terms of the health of the plant at this stage, they tend to start to decline for me at this stage, but these are still going pretty strong. So if I am able to grate and freeze another couple freezer bags of zucchini, that'll be just perfect. Here's Esterina. She's a variety of tomato, and I'm growing her in a 5-gallon pail. She's growing beautifully in here, as she did last year too. That's the type of tomato that she produces. It's just a super sweet type of cherry tomato, and that is the ripe color. The fruit on Esterina doesn't turn red; it's an orange color. Great tomato though, and you know, you can just see how much fruit is in here, just an absolute ton. I gave her a pretty heavy prune just the other day, you know, the non-producing stems I pruned off, which doesn't keep the plant as shaded for the fruit. I think they need the warmth to ripen, to ripen with the good sweetness and flavor. I don't really care for any type of cherry tomato to pick them green and let them ripen in the house. I think that the flavor is definitely different, and so I do like to get them as ripe as I can to allow them to ripen on the vine. Boy, that's a good tomato. Finally, a quick look at the peppers that have been growing here inside the greenhouse. I moved them down to the floor for a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons is because I am again battling aphids. They really cropped up just maybe a week ago, and so I wanted to bring them down onto the floor so that I could inspect them all around a little closer. It was a little bit more difficult when they were up on the bench. I still have Lesia. This is Lesia pepper, and I still have her up on the bench, and mostly because it's not very tall. The others were pretty much touching the roof of the greenhouse. They are still producing, and I am battling the aphids instead of just cutting off the tops or just getting rid of the plants entirely, because I was still hoping for a little bit more fruit set. And so they really had a lull where there was just no blossoms happening. They have started to blossom again, and you know, coincidentally, when they started to blossom was about the time that those aphids started to show up again. Here is the earlier fruit though, that is quite nice. This is Red Knight. This plant is not bothered as much by the aphids. This is King of the North, and also nice fruit production in there, and some are starting to turn a little riper. This one, now you can see the aphid trouble I've got going on right in there. And generally, if I look on the back side of the leaf, I'm finding green aphids. I did spray with Endol the other day, and that was one of the reasons for bringing the plants down, was so that I could spray with Endol from over top. Endol is an insecticidal soap. This is Olympus. Pretty excited for this one because I have my own little record that I'm hoping to beat, and this one might just do it this year. Nice and big, nice and heavy, blocky, beautiful fruit set on the Olympus variety. A bunch in there as well. And this is Jimmy Nardello, just pumping out the fruit. It really is very prolific. I've picked about 50 peppers off this plant so far. We had a feed one night. Jimmy Nardello is a very good pepper. I think they're pretty tasty. They're an Italian frying pepper. They're sweet. They have no heat at all, and they are early to produce. And then I have a flaming flare, and all the peppers on that plant are ripe. I just really want everything to kind of ripen at the same time. The sweet peppers, the hot peppers, and they're not really all that hot, but they are hot peppers, as well as the tomatoes, because I want to use that to make a batch of salsa. So the peppers this year have really been a struggle. They grew so well for me last year in the greenhouse with no trouble at all. This year there was more trouble, in particular with the aphids. And so we'll see how the spring goes. I mean, it has been effective so far, but in order to be 100% effective, you'd have to get over top and underneath of every leaf, which is, darn near impossible to do at this stage. And here the Norland apples are starting to color up some. Usually I'll start looking on the inside of them. I look for at least one brown seed. And so I've just taken a bite out of this one, and the seeds are all still very white in there. And the fruit is still very tart and very hard. It'll be a couple weeks yet, I'm sure, but there is lots of fruit on it. So that's going to be it for the video today. I need to get started on harvesting a few things today. And thanks very much for hanging out with me and taking this little tour. I hope you enjoyed it or found it informative or interesting in some way. And if you did, give me a thumbs up, maybe a hype, maybe tell your friends. And if you have not yet subscribed, I'd love for you to do that too. I hope your garden is also productive, and I hope you're doing well. See you soon.